Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today I have a hand from a $1,500 buy-in no limit hold'em event. Actually, half no limit hold'em, half PLO from the World Series of Poker in 2019. And this is a neat hand. We're playing no limit hold'em in this scenario. 300, 600, 26,000 deep, so 43 big blinds deep. And I pick up pocket aces. This is a great hand, clearly, the best pre-flop hand. And I'm playing against the player in the big blind who is a good pro. This is a very, very well-respected cash game player, well-respected tournament player. He plays great, and he's not afraid to get in there and battle. So I raise under the gun. He calls the big blind. Flop comes 10-6-3. He checks. I'm definitely going to continuation bet frequently and small in this scenario. I actually think I may prefer slightly bigger than small. Like small may be 1,600. I think I would probably bet something like 2,000 in this scenario, maybe even 2,400, just because I do have all the overpairs and the opponent doesn't really. The opponent in this scenario is either going to have a whole lot of flush draws that are going to call any bet, a 10, which is going to call any bet, gut shots, which may raise or call against any bet, and open into straight draws, which will call against any bet or maybe raise as well. So this is a situation where when the opponent has nothing, like queen jack or queen 8, he's just going to fold to any bet, right? But if he does have one of these hands that I just named, it's going to stick around against a 2,000 or 2,200 bet or 2,400 bet. So I think I prefer 2,400 looking at this hand. I did go for a small bet size, which, look, I'm fine with it. Maybe it is just right. But I think this board is connected enough against the big blind caller that I should probably just bet a little bit bigger with my whole range. So anyway, I go 1,600. Opponent calls, which is great. Turn is a 2, so, a few hands get there. 3-2 suited gets there, so 2 combinations of that. 5-4 gets there, maybe all 16 combinations of that. But besides that, we still have the effective nuts, so we're just going to keep putting money in the pot. At this point, I'm always concerned with, think about it, if you've watched some of my other videos for Poker News, you should know this. I'm concerned with how do I get the money in the pot. And right here, let's think about if there is any way I can conceivably get the money in the pot without scaring my opponent off all but his absolute best hands. Well, to get a pot-sized bet on the river, I need to bet something like 5,000 now, and then I can jam the river for pot, right? So if I bet 5,000 now, my stack's going to go down to 17. If the opponent calls, the pot will go up to 17, and then I'll have a pot-sized bet on the river. I think that's kind of nice. That said, I think it's probably better to go a little bit smaller in general on the turn, just because the opponent's range should be kind of marginal. If the opponent does have some 10s, yeah, he's going to call any bet. But what about when he does not have a 10? What about when he's sitting here with a 6 or junky gut shot draw or something like that? It is worth mentioning. I am betting here with the idea that I'm not folding this hand. If I get raised, we're putting our money in, okay? Against good, strong opponents, you just cannot be overly quick to value bet a strong hand and then fold it. Now, against a very weak, tight, straightforward player, maybe it does make sense to value bet the turn and then fold if you get raised. But that's not the game we're playing here. We're playing against a very, very strong opponent. So I'm going to bet. And I go 2,200. And I think this is probably a little bit of a mistake. And the reason is because, like I said, once the opponent calls the flop bet, they probably still do have a whole lot of made hands and or draws that will stick around. I can probably tell you what I was thinking in this scenario. I was probably trying to induce this player to raise me or induce this player to do something silly because I know this player likes to battle, right? There are some people who you will have mild leveling wars with. And now, I typically am not one to be engaged in leveling wars, but some players, it just seems like it inevitably happens. They play a lot of pots, you play a lot of pots, they're aggressive, you're aggressive, they'll fight on the turn, you'll fight on the turn, it's just how it ends up happening. So I get what I'm doing here. With this bet size, I'm doing everything in my power to induce a raise. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Oops, this time it does not. He calls me. River is a 7. And the opponent checks. So now 9-8 got there. You may say the opponent would never call the turn with 9-8. Well, he may, given I bet so tiny, right? 7-6 got there. 10-7 got there. So I do lose to a decent amount of hands now. However, there are a lot of draws that miss for me. Notice if I had any overcard hand, like Queen Jack, or any flush draw, the majority of those missed, right? And even if I had a hand like Ace 2 of Hearts, it effectively missed. So I do have a lot of hands that could conceivably bluff in this scenario. And if you think about it, I don't really have all that many super nut hands. Is aces a super nut hand? Well, if I make a big bet here, like, well, as big as I can go, if I can go all in here, can the opponent call with worse? Well, in a normal scenario, I'd say the answer is probably not. I think a lot of people will start folding out even hands as good as a 10 if I jam it all in. However, this guy might actually call me. You may say, why in the world would he call you if he's a good pro? Well, because he is a battling pro. This is the type of pro who will make light calls on the river even for a lot of chips, especially if you do something a little bit weird. Making a giant bet is a little bit weird. I do wish I would have bet a little bit bigger on the turn to essentially strengthen his range a little bit to the point where now he's going to call a big river bet more often. But I actually think shoving here would be viable against this type of player. I think a regular bet of something like 8,000 is probably a little bit more normal, or a pot size bet, or maybe a 13,000 bet, because this type of player is just never ever folding a 10 for any sort of normal-ish bet. The real question is, how do I get called by a 6? Is there a way I can get called by a hand like 6-5 or 6-4 or a6 or king 6? And I think, to be fair, if I jam it all in, the opponent may actually call it something like king 6, whereas he may fold to like a 7,000 bet with king 6. I know it's a little bit counterintuitive. Why would the opponent call a bigger bet with a weaker hand? But if my opponent thinks I will drastically over bluff for the big bet size, then he may decide to hero call in this scenario, which would obviously be great for me because I have the nuts, right? The problem with the big bets, though, is that you do run into better hands sometimes, and you cannot overlook that because my opponent is not going to lead with random two pair that he got there on the river with. So if your opponent is not going to lead with the two pair type hands, that means we have to be a little bit cautious when it comes to making big shoves. I'd much prefer a big shove with a hand like pocket 6s or pocket 3s or pocket 2s or 5-4 suited, right? Because then when our opponent does have two pair, I still win. That said, I do think against this type of player, it's probably okay to jam. It's also kind of nice that I have the ace of hearts in my hand because that means he's going to have fewer combinations of flush draws, right, than if I did not have the ace of hearts. Because if I don't have the ace of hearts, it means he can have ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 10, ace 9, ace 8, ace 7, right? He can have all of these ace of hearts hands that miss that will fold a river bet. Whereas when I have the ace of hearts, it means he's more likely to not have a flush draw. And if he does have a flush draw, it's not going to be a good one anyway, right? It's going to be more like a queen jack of hearts type hand that's going to fold to any bet. Now, those are the merits for making a giant bet or a big bet, right? Are there merits for making a small bet? Well, I think making a small bet of like 2,500 could be very nice, especially if I thought my opponent had a lot of busted draws. But when the 7 comes on the river, notice that a lot of the busted draws just got there, right? 9-7 got there, 8-7 got there, right? If the opponent did randomly have a hand like 7-5 or 7-4, perhaps with hearts, that got there. So these are all marginal made hands now that will call a reasonable bet of like 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000. If I thought my opponent's range was just a lot of ace high type hands for some reason, which again is unlikely because I have two aces in my hand, then I definitely like a smaller bet size to try to get a hero call or perhaps to induce a bluff. But with my exact two cards, especially the ace of hearts in my hand, I think I just prefer a big bet. So let's see what I do. I do go all in. I go for all of it. Ooh, this is risky. This is dicey. It's always fun whenever you make this all in bet because sometimes you still just lose. And the risk of making this all in bet is that if the opponent does fold out a 10, then this bet's just awful. So this bet is either very good when the opponent will call with a 10, or very bad when the opponent does not call with a 10, because that's really what we're trying to get called by. And this is where it is highly, highly, highly important that you pay attention to your opponent, you know their tendencies, and you have some idea of what they are doing. And like I said, I've played a lot of cash games with this player, I've played a lot of tournaments with this player, and he's not afraid. So against this player, I definitely like this strategy. And it's funny enough, like on the turn, I was saying I really don't like this small turn bet in general, but against this player I do, because he'll bluff raise me sometimes when I do this. And by the same token, I don't know if I necessarily love this all in, but against this player I do. And that's just good live tournament poker for you. So anyway, he does call, and am I out? I'm not out. He had the queen 10 of clubs, and notice he has a pretty good hand to call with too, right? He does not block the busted flush draws at all. And, well, he knows I can get after it. The question is, am I ever actually getting after it here? That's up for him to decide. That's up for you to decide. Maybe we'll see next time for PokerNews.com on these videos for them. Hope you enjoyed these videos. If you did, click like, click subscribe, share them with your friends. And also, if you want a completely free trial to my training site, head over there right now to PokerCoaching.com. I have been hiring many of the absolute best poker players in the world to teach you and me how to play better poker. I've hired Jonathan Jaffe recently, one of the absolute best exploitative players in the game, to help me learn how to play better exploitative poker. And I've hired the GTO expert, Michael Acevedo, who recently wrote the amazing book, Modern Poker Theory, to teach high-level GTO strategies. That is available for the students of Poker Coaching Premium. For full details of that, go to pokercoaching.com/premium. Hope you enjoy it. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Thanks for being here. And I'll talk to you next time.